So welcome everybody to today's webinar. Our topic is Empower and Energize, utilizing Cloverleaf for enhanced employee motivation. So this topic came out of feedback that we received on our webinar last month. Jason and I really sat with it and looked through what could we tie together that gets as much of this feedback incorporated. So we are going to give you the opportunity to give feedback in today's webinar, and I definitely encourage you to give that feedback. That is how we design our webinars. We do not design them sort of in this vacuum. We do try to take into consideration what your needs are. So Jason, if you would just share the resource again for anyone who just joined us since we shared it again. The resource that we're going to be using for today's webinar is in the chat. And this is everything that is going to be on the slides. So you don't need the slide deck. Everything's here. And there are sections here that you can forward to as you follow along with the webinar. So if you're a visual learner and you need to follow along with text as I speak, you might want to look at this. If you're someone who's auditory, you learn more by listening. You can use this as a reference for later. But we're going to go from there. Okay. Alrighty then. So let's get started. The first thing we're going to do is take a poll of who's here and the role that you have. Something we do all the time just to get a sense of who's joining us. So we're going to do that after I go through the agenda. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about employee motivation versus employee engagement. Sometimes these things get a little bit collapsed, so I'm going to distinguish them. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about how motivation correlates to engagement. There is a connection. They are not the same thing, but there is a connection. And then we're also going to talk about how Cloverleaf can help. We're going to talk about self and team awareness. We're going to talk about some specific things you can do to support leaders and individual contributors. I'm going to share with you an exercise that was just spontaneously suggested by a user that I was on a training session with yesterday. It's reverse Cloverleaf hot seat, which I thought was really interesting. And then we also have a preview for you. We have put together a program that we previously had only been doing privately for clients with groups of leaders. We're going to be doing a public offering of our program called Implementing Cloverleaf in Your Organization. It's a Train the Trainer program. So we're going to be sharing a little bit about that program with you. And if you're interested in learning more about that program, we're going to share an interest form with you that will allow you to let us know, hey, you're interested in finding out more about that program. And then we'll talk about our date for our next webinar, questions, feedback, all of that good stuff. Okay, so first we want to know a little bit more about you. So Jason, if you would launch our poll, let us know which best describes your role. Are you a senior or C-suite talent or learning leader? Are you a director or manager level talent or learning leader? Are you a manager of a team and your team's on Cloverleaf, you're a manager? Are you an individual contributor? Or are you one of our partners, a coach or consultant? We want to get a sense of the group that's with us. So take a moment and answer that question for us. Best describes your role. So Rebecca, if you would just answer the poll on the screen, that'll give us, we can't input your answer into the poll to change it. So if you could just select that on the poll on the screen, that would be great.
And then if you're having trouble finding the poll, sometimes it's behind the Zoom window. So you might need to move us around or click the poll / quizzes button down there at the bottom. We're almost at 90%. There's a few more people to answer. All right. So I think we've got a good idea here. Our largest segment, almost 40% of people are managers. And our next segment is individual contributors. We have
our next group, which is a director or manager level talent learning leader. And we have coaching consultant and senior or C-suite talent leader rounding us out. So thank you very much for answering. That really helps us to know a little bit more about who is here with us. Okay, let's poll. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, oh, something cut up on my slide. I apologize for that. So we're going to talk a little bit about employee motivation versus employee engagement. So I'll go from the resource. So motivation really refers to the internal or external factors, the things that are around us and within us that are driving an employee to take an action or to actually perform. So that motivation is talking about how willing am I to invest time and energy into achieving goals. So it's very personal. Motivation is very personal. Engagement is connected to that commitment that an employee has towards their organization and whatever that organization has said, these are our goals. So when employees are engaged, they might be enthusiastic and they're going to have increased levels of organizational participation and organizational loyalty. So what does that mean? Organizational participation means I participate more, I'm involved more, I'm front and center, I'm networking throughout the organization, I'm engaged. And my organizational loyalty is, hey, I'm all in, right? I'm aligned with the values of this organization. I'm going to give, my best to the organization. So now there's that sort of connection. Like, what does that mean? How does motivation and engagement connect? So this is pretty recent data from Gallup. So in the first quarter of this year, 17% of employees were actively disengaged. This is 1 point higher than for the full year of 2023. And now we have a sort of ratio of 1.8 engaged employees for every actively disengaged employee, right? So this has gone down a little bit. And that ratio used to be 2.1 to 1, right? So we can see that engagement can be a big issue. Actively disengaged, right? Actively not participating, actively doing the bare minimum, right? So that's a concerning, right? We want to connect, right, motivation to engagement because we want engagement to be high, right? So when we think about, and I'll go through, when I think about how motivation correlates to engagement, there's a couple of ways that it connects. The first is it's got an impact on performance. So when you have motivation and engagement together, it can drive employee performance. So if I'm a motivated employee, I'm going to be more productive, and engaged employees may give more discretionary effort. So I may be motivated, but I might not always be engaged based upon my experience in the organization. So I've had this experience before in a role I had many years ago. I loved what I did, but the organizational context was not very empowering, right? So I was motivated to do my job, but I didn't always have that desire to go above and beyond for something outside of my specific responsibilities. Like I wouldn't sign up for committees or extra volunteering or things like that. So when people are engaged, they may give more what we call discretionary effort. That's that effort that people hold back, and they give more of it when they feel engaged. And this contributes to overall higher performance. It also, motivation can connect to engagement based on interdependence. So when employees are engaged, they tend to have higher levels of motivation. This means there's a higher level of emotional connection to the content of what I'm doing every day. And that may correlate directly with being driven to perform, right? So there is that relatedness. Motivated employees can become engaged over time. So motivation is a great place to start. Motivation doesn't always equal engagement. It doesn't always equal it, right? But usually engagement can be a sign of motivation, right? Which is a little bit confusing. But motivated employees, if you've got someone who's motivated, but they're maybe not all bought into the organization, they can become engaged over time if their motivation leads to them having a certain experience of being successful, being productive in the organization, and also having a deeper sense of belonging in an organization. So you can think about this also in the context of a newer employee who might be really motivated to do their job. Maybe they have previous experience, but they're not yet sure. They haven't made a decision yet on how I feel about the organization because I have to experience it first. So that's why, when we first experience someone who's motivated, we have this potential to have that lead to engagement. The impact of leadership is so critical. If you haven't yet read the book, It's the Manager by Gallup, I would 100% suggest that you read it. And it really talks about the correlation of leadership to engagement. But effective leadership behaviors can really drive both of these things, right? They can also kill both of these things. Ineffective leadership can really tank motivation and engagement. When leaders are very clear about what the goal is, when they recognize their employees, there's a lot of opportunities for growth, and this can boost motivation. When a leader contributes to a positive organizational culture, when there's work-life balance that's promoted, when there's high team trust, both one-on-one and at the team level, this can also enhance engagement. So the impact of leadership on motivation and engagement is so impactful, right? And so the book that I mentioned, I'll pop it in the chat. Yes, it's called It's the Manager. And there's a lot of great data that came out of it. One of the statistics is that 70% of the time, low engagement can be correlated to the quality of the leader. So what does that mean? 7 times out of 10, when someone says I'm not engaged, that same employee, when they were asked why they weren't engaged, they said it's the quality of my leader, right? And so that's a big number, right? And so there's been a lot of articles written about that. You can even pop that into Google. It'll take you to an article about it. But it's a really, really, it's an easy to read book. But it talks a lot about these topics and how you can influence them and how important leadership behavior is. So how can Cloverleaf help, right? Well, so part of what Cloverleaf is dedicated to is unleashing people to do their best work. So that speaks directly to people being motivated and possibly with the potential of being engaged. So how Cloverleaf can help is simply by using it and getting more people on your team to see how it can be used to do the first thing, which is to increase self and team awareness. When I am more aware of myself, my strengths, my tendencies, and my behaviors, I can better engage and bring my best self to my work, to my tasks, to my interactions. When my team awareness is heightened, I can better collaborate, communicate with my team across functions in collaborative projects, right? When I have that increased awareness, I can make better choices. So how do I do that? The first thing you want to make sure that if you haven't done, and that if your team hasn't done, is to set your coaching focus. We shared this on the last webinar because it was brand new, but if you haven't yet set your coaching focus, or maybe you did set a coaching focus and you want to change it, you want to make sure that you do that. So how you set your coaching focus is first you have to set your roles. There's a little pencil next to your role here, and you have to make sure you put that role in. And so, where did it go? Oh, here it is. It moved over here. Okay, so you're going to select the role that you have. Are you a team lead? Are you responsible for projects leading others, but not a manager of others? Are you a team manager? You manage individual contributors? Are you a business lead? Do you manage other managers? Are you a coach, a consultant? Are you an individual contributor, right? So you select your role and you save it. And then you choose your coaching focus. So when you click on this little bullseye here, you're going to choose a coaching focus. This is my current coaching focus, is managing my emotions and understanding others to build better relationships. What that means is that a couple of times a week, or at least once a week, your coaching tip will be relevant to that. Now, let's see if my coaching tip, okay, so it's not. So today's coaching tip isn't related to my coaching focus, but if it was, you would see the little bullseye right here, right? So the first thing you can do is make sure that you set your coaching focus. That gives you the opportunity to actually increase awareness about an area that you want to grow and develop in. And that can help me be more motivated to learn and grow and then contribute back the lesson or the information that I'm learning from as I'm getting and reflecting on my coaching tips. The next thing you can do is not just consume your daily coaching emails, but also do the reflections. So I've shared a lot about reflections and I've shared a lot about insight search, and we're going to talk about team thinking styles comparison. But what I think is the most important thing is that if you are currently on a team and you don't have a commitment, a collective commitment around Cloverleaf use, I would say that's the number one thing you can take away from this webinar. Whether you're a leader, you're an individual contributor, you're a talent leader, it's so important for teams to have an agreed to sort of practice of how we're going to use Cloverleaf. So for example, if we as a team can agree that we're going to do our daily coaching reflections twice a week, right? That automatically is a tool for increasing self and team awareness, right? And so if I can reflect on how I can leverage my strength to help people feel at ease in social situations in my next team project, right? So I can, maybe connect with a few people prior to the meeting about project X to make them feel more comfortable. I'm just giving you an example. So now this tip now gives me an idea. Oh, I'm going to reach out to some new folks who are joining a project team and just connect with them. Now I have an action that I'm taking because I'm reminded that I'm good at this, right? Now I'm going to get a tip about, oh, look, I got a tip about Jason and it's in my coaching focus, right? So this is focusing on emotional intelligence, and it's telling me one of the best strategies for diffusing conflict with Jason is to face the situation squarely and take responsibility for whatever role each person has played. Jason will respect this and take personal responsibility as well, right? Now, I've never had conflict with Jason, so this is asking me to reflect on a past conflict with Jason and how taking responsibility impacted the resolution. But what I can say is Jason and I communicate clearly and respectfully at all times.
I think the only conflict I had with you was you didn't bring enough cookies to the last all team over the winter.
Yes, we had a bake off at our all teams. I did win second place, right? Jason is one of the easiest human beings to work with. So, but Jason and I communicate clearly and respectfully at all times, and I will continue to respect his knowledge and role on our team, right? So you complete that. So if your team can agree to do that twice a week, right? I think it can be a huge contribution. You can even just say, we're going to do it twice a week for a month, right? I think that's a huge contribution to increasing that self and team awareness. And you see how that didn't take that long. Remember, these are private, they are stored. It becomes your own coaching journal. So as I then am reminded of my strengths, it makes me reach out to someone. I'm reminded of a positive relationship that I have in my work team. It may just, hey, reminds me, hey, I like being in this organization, right? So these small bits of information can over time collectively contribute to the increase of that motivation and increase of that engagement. Now, nobody gets value from going to the gym once. They get value from repeatedly going to the gym over time. So it's really important that some of these small Cloverleaf habits are filled. The other way to increase self and team awareness is investing time in preparing for conversation. So I've shared with you a lot about insight search and all the different ways that you can prepare for it. We do have some other webinars where we went into specific scenarios of using insight search, and we actually gave you a couple of prompts. I believe that was in the last webinar. And you can go into the Help Center and see those different webinars where we give all of that information. But if I want to be able to communicate effectively, and my employee experience, right, is based upon the interactions, the communications, and the collaborations that I have in my organization, and I want those to be positive. So if I want to give feedback to somebody and I want to make sure that goes well, I may want to use Cloverleaf here, right? So I may want to use Cloverleaf in this way so that I can prepare to have that feedback and to make sure that I communicate responsibly. Now, if I did not use Insight Search and I went into a conversation with Peggy to give her feedback and didn't do any preparation or thought, and I go in sort of not with any plan, right? It's a crapshoot about how that conversation is going to go. But if I take 2 or 3 minutes to intentionally increase myself and my team awareness, I'm going to have a better conversation with Peggy. That better conversation is part of the building blocks of my employee experience. So now my employee experience improves, right? It might affect my engagement. It might affect my motivation. I don't know. I can't prove those things on paper, but it's a possibility. It's a strong possibility that my positive employee experience can increase my motivation and my engagement. If I really want to understand more about someone on my team and I just can't seem to work it out, I may want to, or maybe I'm working with Peggy and Lane and I want to understand how they work together. I'm about to work with them. I might understand how they're similar or how they're different. I can see that they're very similar here, right? And I can understand a little bit more about my team, and maybe I go in a little bit more confident into working with those two people so that I can have a better experience, right? So all of these features, when used in a more repetitive way, can strongly impact that self and team awareness. So if I'm more aware of myself, I'm more aware of my team, I'm having more quality interactions, I'm leveraging more of my strengths. If I'm on a team where we all have a commitment to use Cloverleaf in a certain way, maybe we share a tip in a meeting, then I can have that experience of somebody caring about my growth and development. Somebody saying, hey, I want you to use this tool, right, to increase your growth and development, right? And that gives me, as an employee, it gives me the opportunity to increase my connection with the organization and to possibly tap into strengths to increase my motivation in my role. Now, if you have any questions, I want you to feel free to pop them in the chat. If you do have any questions.
We do have one in the Q&A.
Okay.
Is it best practice to link out to the help articles for employee or to employees? And an example would be how to use Disc as a manager, or just any article opened to like admin/management is, I guess, how I would
Yeah.
interpret.
So go ahead. You can answer that, Jason, if you want.
Sure. Yeah. I think you could go a lot of different ways with an answer or with this question. So, we have a lot of help center resources that kind of drill down into specific topics. So like if you are wanting to share a resource on how to improve conflict management or goal setting, things like that, we do have those specific kind of resources. And then I think we also, to kind of zoom out a little bit, we do have like those more general articles around how to use Disc as a manager. I think we have one for Enneagram and 16 types as well. Um, I think it depends on the outcome or the goal you're trying to achieve with said manager. There's a lot of different ways you could go with it, but
Right.
tons of great stuff in there.
Yeah, and they are definitely all available to anybody. These are all public on the web. So these are available to anyone, and you can use the search bar to find articles that are relevant to what you're looking for. I think that if you have high trust with a team member, then it's completely fine to share a resource and be like, hey, I thought this resource would be interesting to you, right? So it depends on the context and the trust, right? Hey, I'd love for you to use Cloverleaf. I think Cloverleaf would be a great asset to helping you with some of the challenges that are happening in your team right now. Check out this resource around using Cloverleaf to navigate conflict. I think that's completely fine. That's a leader looking out for their team members to be like, I want to give you access to resources that can help you. So I would say if you've got high trust, if it's relevant to whatever the team is dealing with, then absolutely, please feel free to share these articles if they're helpful. Right. So here's another way that Cloverleaf can help. So this is first going to be directed towards leaders. I'm going to do this also for individual contributors. So if you're a leader or if you're a learning leader who's supporting leaders, this is information you can share this resource for helping to support a leader to drive meaningful development conversations, right? So what I like to do is orient a leader with the categories of coaching tips of an individual that might be low in motivation and engagement. So if you're on the team dashboard, and because Jason's here, I'm going to just go to his profile, right? So when you go to someone's profile, I'm going to view their profile. you've got all of Jason's coaching tips in these categories, right? So if I've got someone, if I'm managing Jason directly and Jason is struggling being motivated in his role, as their leader, I want to be really interested in what motivates Jason. So I might go and look, right, at Jason's specific motivation tips. There's 64 tips just related to motivating Jason, right? So it's telling me that Jason has a strong inner drive to make the world better. And he might even strive for perfection in all facets of life and work. And honesty and the utmost integrity are core motivations for Jason, right? So now, if Jason's maybe taking a little bit longer on a project, I now can understand it's that drive, right, to make sure that it's going to be the best possible outcome, right? And I can even say to him, like, Jason, I really appreciate that you want to get this so right. And I want to let you know it's okay if, it's imperfect right now. I want to be able to support you, right? So I can now speak and customize my communication with Jason, and I can tap into his motivation without making him feel deflected, right? So poor Jason gets put on the spot, right? When I pull up his profile. But this resource, and imagine being a leader and having a key to unlock what motivates Jason. Oh, I can read some of these tips. And if I'm unsure if some of them are true, I can even, have a conversation. Is this really, what's driving you when XYZ happens? Right. So you want to review certain categories of coaching tips when that person, if you're the leader and you're struggling with a person who, or you're managing a leader who's struggling with someone with low motivation, right? So I touched on motivation tips. Also, the development tips. What are areas for development and what resources does our organization provide in these areas? So I'll go back to Jason's profile and I'll go back to development, right? And development tips is going to give you areas of opportunity for growth for the people on your team. I want to just make something clear. All of these tips are written by our contextual coaching team. And they are written with a basic assumption that people are good intentioned, right? So there's nothing here that's going to be so revealing or share something secretive. So it's written with like good intention. So this is saying Jason is likely generous with time and talent, and sometimes he may be stretched too thin. So feel free to ask Jason for Jason's assistance, but be considerate of how your ask fits with other priorities on Jason's plate. Okay, great. So now let's say I have a time management course that can help regulate stress and it's available and I know about it. Now I might talk to Jason like, hey, do you feel, as his leader, do you feel stretched too thin? Right? Do you feel like stressed out right now? Hey, I want to offer you this resource that we just got access to. This might help you in managing boundaries and communication so that you don't get overwhelmed. Right? So now I'm using this information. I'm checking in with Jason to see how that's affecting me. Now he may say, no, I'm good. I'll be like, okay, well, just let me know if you get to that point. I'm happy to support you. Or he could say, yeah, I'm really overwhelmed right now, right? And maybe I'm reassuring him, giving him support. Maybe he's putting undue pressure on himself, right? So now I can open up a conversation about something. Instead of just asking someone, how's it going? What's new? Right? Now I can have a more intentional conversation with Jason if I think he's struggling or I think he's, somehow his motivation, his engagement is lower. So we have development tips, we have motivation tips. Am I tapping into their motivation as a leader? Is the context and content of their work motivating given their motivation coaching tips, right? So is it motivating them? Is their work motivating them given what I see drives them? So this is a simple thing a leader can do to access a person's profile to drive these meaningful development conversations. You can also review their strengths, right? Are they using their top strengths? So if I go back to Jason's profile and I go to his top strengths, let's see. So this is Clifton strengths, right? And we also have strength scope and bias strengths, right? So I might look at Jason's strengths. I might look at his significant 7 strengths on strength scope. I might look at his Clifton strengths results, responsibility, futuristics, Futurists are inspired by their dreams of the future and what could be. These dreamers often inspire others with their visions of the future. This is great. I might say to Jason, hey, do you feel like the things that you're working on are giving you enough impact on the future of our department? Right. And so he might say, no, I'm not really doing anything like that right now. Great. So what's an idea you have? Do you see now, like I can actually target one of Jason's strengths, give him an opportunity to work in his zone of genius, and that can tap into motivation. And I don't have to go very far. I don't have to do much. I'm clicking on one thing, right? So as a leader, having access to this, you're bringing intention to conversations. Jason, anything else you want to share just about what I'm talking about, what I'm sharing about you, since I'm talking about you so much?
I know you touched on a few of this. I might say a little bit more when we talk about the thinking styles and
Okay.
the good intentions behind that. But I think just for right now, the futuristic one ties in with the motivating trait that we talked about. And I think it's really cool to see how all of that ties together, especially when you're going through those tips about how can I motivate so and so? How can I, keep them engaged? I think it's really kind of cool to see where all of those tips really point or come from.
Excellent. So you're noticing the correlation
Yeah.
between your what's coming through in your motivation tips and your assessment results. Awesome.
Yeah. And it's true. All of it
Yeah.
is true.
Yeah.
It's a hard truth
Excellent.
sometimes, but it's true.
Okay. So we have a really good question. Katie asked, what are the top 3 to 5 assessments you suggest managers to ask their team to take so the manager can gain the most insight about their team? This is an awesome question. So I want to go to the team dashboard just to show you a little bit about how the assessments are differentiated. So in the left, if you notice this, in the top sort of title here says behavior. So 16 types, DISC, and Enneagram are your behavioral assessments. Then you've got strengths, right? You have productivity, which is energy rhythm. You have your strengths assessments, which are in the center, right? And then you also have your culture assessments, which are in the right. So what I always suggest to people, I always say do at least 2 of the behavioral, right? So do at least, I would say always do DISC, because DISC is one of the behavioral assessments that was specifically designed for teams in the workplace. I would always do DISC and then pick 16 types or Enneagram based on personal preference. Do a strengths assessment. So if you have VIA strengths, do strengths. Do culture pulse, do a culture assessment, do culture pulse, maybe do motivating values. If you want to do instinctive drives, you can do that too, right? So hit all the categories is the point. Always try to do at least 2 of the behavior assessments. Make sure you got a strengths assessment. Make sure you have a cultural assessment, because all of these assessments measure different things. And we went over that in the last webinar, in the last month's webinar. You can catch that recording. It's good to get a group combination so that you're not just doing behavioral assessments. You're not just doing strengths assessments. You're not just doing cultural assessments. Also, be not afraid to ask people to complete assessments, okay? We are all grown adults. It takes about 8 to 10 minutes maximum to take one of these assessments. Once you take it, it's done. If we are afraid to ask people to take an assessment, that's a whole other webinar. Don't be afraid to ask people to put in a couple of minutes to make this engine go, okay? All right. So in terms of access to other assessments, Vanessa, it depends on the settings of your organization, what they subscribe to, how many assessments they have available to them based on their subscription, and what the organization has decided they want to make available to people. So sometimes organizations will just open up 2 or 3 assessments. So you have to kind of touch base with your admin to see what assessments they're making available to people and if they can release more to your group or your team. Okay. So if you're an individual contributor, let's flip the script a little bit, right? But you want to self-reflect and you want support because maybe you're not feeling motivated or you're not feeling engaged, right? Check out your development tips, right? So I'm going to go to my development tips right here. So go to your profile. By the way, these tips are on your profile. They're not on your assessments. My assessments just has your assessment results. Your profile is what has your results. So go to your development tips And you want to go through some of them and see what resonates the most with you, right? Where are those areas for development that you want to ask support for, right? So what are the areas for development that I need or want to ask support with? And how would this support make a difference, right? I may share the problem with my leader and say, hey, this is an area for development that was reinforced on Cloverleaf that I really do need support with. You also want to go through your own motivation tips. Where in my current role am I motivated, and what is it in contrast to what motivates me, right? So where am I motivated, and how is it, does it match what actually drives me, or doesn't it? What's missing from the context or content of my work that would increase my motivation? And if I'm on my profile and I'm going through my motivation tips, I can actually share this tip. I can go and say, you know what, in our one-on-one, I want to share with you something that I just read about myself on Cloverleaf, and I'm going to share it. So I might copy it and send it to my manager. And this tip is talking about how new projects excite me, right? And it's talked a little bit about preparation and how preliminary work can save time. And maybe I'm working on some very repetitive, boring things, and I want something new to sink my teeth into because I'm getting all my work done and I'm a little bored, right? So maybe I want to use this as a conversation opener with my leader, because I'm not just using my words, I'm taking these words from Cloverleaf and I'm sharing them. I can also, similarly as to how I shared me as a leader going to Jason's strengths, I can go to my own strengths, right? What strengths would I like to be using more of the time? Are there projects or initiatives that I would like to be more involved with given my strengths? So if I go into my strengths and I go into my VIA strengths, right? My number one strength is love of learning. If I'm not currently learning something in what I'm doing, I'm going to be really demotivated, right? So I may ask to be given a stretch assignment. Hey, I'm getting all my work done, but I need to feel like I'm continuing learning and growing. I'd love a stretch assignment, maybe that I can try that can help me grow an aspect of my, professional expertise, right? And so seeing as that's my number one strength, I can have a conversation with my leader, right? And it's telling them, hey, this person is driven by being able to master new skills, topics, and bodies of knowledge, right? And so I want that opportunity. If that's not happening for me, I can pull up my dashboard right away with my leader and say, hey, I want to discuss this with you. I feel like I'm not using one of the strongest aspects of who I am in my role. How can we change that? What's available? What's possible? So we have to be able, as individual contributors, we also have to be able to advocate for ourselves. As leaders, we need to be open to individual contributors advocating. If they're telling you, this is what I need to be more motivated and engaged, you want to create that environment where they feel comfortable doing that. So if you're a leader, you may want to, in a team meeting, say, hey, everyone, I want to make sure you're all working in your zone of genius. So in our next one-on-one, I want you to come to our one-on-one telling me how you feel you're using one of your top 5 strengths, right? And do you see how that now gives intention to that conversation, right? Instead of saying, what's working, what's not working, right? I want you to tell me exactly how you're using one of these strengths. And if you're not, I want you to suggest how you could, right? That's a development conversation that someone's really going to appreciate. Imagine your boss coming to you and saying, tell me how I can, tell me how you can use your strengths more. Any questions about anything I've shared so far? I want you to feel free to put them right in the chat. I know I'm giving you a lot of information. So if you have any questions, I want you to feel free to pop them in the chat before we move forward to the next exercise. We have an exercise that you can do. Any questions? If you are typing a question, keep typing your question. Oh, what are some good icebreaker ideas to do in the meetings? Ruth, that's a perfect cue to the next exercise. This is a team exercise. Also, Jason, for Ruth, would you also go grab the icebreakers and meeting activities link? Ruth, Jason's going to share a specific link with you that has more exercises and activities that you can go over, but I'm going to give you a team exercise that you can use right now specific to this topic. Okay, so these are some scenarios. This is reverse Cloverleaf hot seat. If you don't know about Cloverleaf hot seat, it's also in our help center. And you can search that. And Jason, maybe you can share that as well. Actually, I think it's in there. Cloverleaf hot seat is in there, is in that article. Cloverleaf hot seat is an exercise where you kind of ask someone, it's kind of like I just put Jason on the spot and I read a tip about him. I ask Jason to share how he's used that strength recently. And then I ask the team to share, how have you seen Jason strive for excellence, right? Okay, so we're going to go into, so this can be good where this exercise can be helpful when a team is totally new. Okay, so when a team is entirely new, this is a good exercise. It's also great when a team has recently had a big change, a new leader, additional team members are added, when team morale is low, when a team is experiencing burnout, and when a leader is struggling to motivate their team. So if any of these things or multiple things are true, I'm going to go through this exercise. It's also in your resource, not to worry. So you're going to ask each person prior to the team meeting, ask each person on the team to review their motivation tips on their individual profile. So remember, if they go to their profile, they're going to see their motivation tips. So you're going to ask each team member to review those tips, okay? Kind of go through them. The next thing you're going to do is ask each team members to select 1 or 2 motivation tips that they would most like the team to understand about them. These are things you really want people to understand about you. You're going to encourage the team to listen for what might be new or interesting about their team members. Okay, everyone, we're going to hear something about what motivates each person on this team. I want you to listen to learn. Ask each person to share the tip and then share an example of that motivation tip in action in the workplace or even in a previous organization. So what this looks like is this. So it says, my upbeat presence can help rally others around a cause. Your positivity strength does not just beam optimism into others, but it can motivate others to want to achieve great things. So I might say it's really important to me to feel like I'm making a difference with my team members. And an example of this is, me getting really excited to put together a webinar learning strategy for Cloverleaf and collaborating on that with Jason and how well that's gone, right? And so I really want to make sure that if there's something that you need, support in, or that you want to infuse positivity, and I want you to feel like you can come to me. So that's what this kind of looks like. You read the tip, you give an example, and each person goes around and shares that. Hold on, I'm going to the next slide. Okay, so then you debrief the conversation by asking a few powerful questions. What was the most surprising to you about what you heard from what motivates your team members, right? So then you can, I didn't know that about Jason or Melanie or whatever it was. What did you learn about someone else that sparks an idea or action for you to take after this conversation? So someone might say, hey, Stephanie, I really would love your take on this project because I feel like you can bring some creativity to it, right? So some collaboration actions happen. There's listening, there's learning, there's interaction happening. And variations of this exercise can be done by selecting different categories of coaching tips, such as work style or communication style. Maybe your team is struggling with communication, so you ask them to pick a communication tip that they think is important for everyone to know. So this is a quick exercise. You give people the instructions beforehand. Depending on the size of your team, it might take 15 or 20 minutes. It could take longer, depending on how long you want to talk. So this exercise outline is